Welcome to Collaborate and Create, a series of short conversations sharing our collective insights into leadership teams and organisations based on our work as leadership coaches and consultants. We invite you to explore alongside us as we create a collection of day-to-day practices to help develop and grow your leadership.
Kindness is at the heart of what we each do and has brought us together, and meeting people where they're at with kindness. This week is Kindness Week, and it seems like a good time for us to be sharing our thoughts and reflections on kindness, especially at this time where kindness more than ever matters.
I think you're absolutely right, Annie. It's something that's cropping up, not necessarily in conversation about kindness, but perhaps in where it's missing. And I'm finding people are struggling at the moment. It's been a long time. This lockdown feels harder. Leaders are losing energy and focus, and teams are exhausted. And it's something that by latching onto our own kindness to ourselves, not only towards others, but to ourselves, that we can often find a deeper and stronger connection with others. So, I'm delighted to be talking about kindness, and wondering how we could be encouraging people to be softer and kindness within themselves this week.
Lovely, Lucy. And I think, that brings to my mind the idea of, if you're going to be anything, be kind. And how do we bring that to ourselves? The little microaggressions that we play against ourselves. I didn't do that very well. My hair wasn't right for that Zoom, or my makeup wasn't right, or whatever. I didn't have the right shirt on. Really noticing those little microaggressions and asking, could I be kinder? Small incremental steps that are manageable in a day-to-day, and and really get us over that hump of harm that we've done to ourselves over the last year, and perhaps our whole lives we've done it, but really starting to bring in these little small practices on a daily basis that when we start doing them, they're like a pebble in a pond, right? And it ripples out across, and others start to feel the waves of that as well. So lovely to be really reflecting on how that could look for us in Kindness Week as it is this week.
One of the things that's going through my mind from a piece of work that I contributed towards, the speaker spoke about be kind, be direct. And they were his final parting words, encouraging us in our leadership to be kind, be direct. He opened the program. His name is Raj Kumar, and it was so interesting to learn from him how he puts this into his everyday leadership.
It's interesting, isn't it? Often we might think we're being kinder by not being direct, by skirting around an issue or avoiding giving some difficult feedback, having a tricky conversation. But what tends to happen is it builds up and it stacks up and it causes tension and conflict. And it's not something that I think anyone would start out with an intention to do that. So I love that kind of play between kindness and directness and courage, actually, because often to be directly kind, we actually need to dig deep and find our courage, so that we can be direct with kindness. I love that interplay between the two of them.
It sits well with a book that I've been recommending to people probably for the past 12 months called Radical Candor by Kim Scott, in which she combines being personally caring, kind to self and other, with being directly challenging. And she also talks about ruinous empathy. I love the way she describes that, where being overly kind and not directly challenging, we're not actually really helping people to feel safe and to be in relationship with each other. So it's the rich mix between being personally caring and directly challenging that I think really matters.
And playing into that idea of sort of robust vulnerability, it feels hard sometimes to be kind. We find it difficult because we want to be empathetic, or we want to be sympathetic, and we don't really want to be prepared to bear the truth of where we're at. But just because it's a hard truth doesn't mean that it needs to be delivered in an unkind way. We can hear and see people where they are, resonate with what they're going through, and then deliver a conversation, a listening, whatever it might be, in a way that really meets them where they are, and helps them grow and move through their space, versus finding themselves stuck. I think that empathy piece there, Annie, is a good one. It can get sticky.
Mm-hmm.
It's like treacle, right? And we're stuck in it.
There's almost a foundation to be built, isn't there, for the kindness and the directness to be most effective, to make that connection so it's actually received in the way it's intended. And it was really interesting to see some research that was published this week, I think, from McKinsey, on what the most effective leadership mindsets and behaviours are to create safety, psychological safety at work. And in fact, one of the ones they pinpointed was, yes, be challenging as a leader, but that only works when it's within a foundation of support. And if you can come to that support from a place of kindness and care, then it's going to be well met. So there's an encouragement, an invitation to leaders to really, if you can start with kindness towards the people you're working with, towards the people you're leading, you can't really go far wrong. Because then the difficult messages, the challenges, the difficult choices, the feedback conversations that are going to add the most value to drive you all forward are going to be met. They're going to be heard. They're going to be more well received.
It takes me into that spot of that idea of, an unconditional positive regard for people. We really come at them with, I believe that they have the knowledge, insight, strength, whatever, to be able to achieve their own goals. And, all built, I think the work that the three of us work on so regularly, that idea of relationships, it's all built within relationships, developing really strong foundations. Through all of that really brings together that kindness, that regard for others, and recognizing that we're all in the same storm maybe sometimes, but we're in different boats, and bringing those together really help us see people where they are. I think it's really resonant. Yeah, interesting to hear McKenzie picking it up as well.
Delighted to hear picking it up. Yeah,
indeed.
We can share that on the in the text as well, the link to that article, and also to the book Radical Candor.
Mm-hmm. What are your sum up thoughts on kindness then for this week? For Kindness Week, what would be your one top tip for your colleagues, leaders, individuals out there?
For me, it's around asking a question. Where can I be more kind to myself today? Where can I show kindness towards others? And making that part of my intention for the day, but also reflecting on that at the end of the day. Yesterday, I was in conversation with a team and reminding them of making a to-be list as well as their to-do list. So I think having on my to-be list is to be kind and be direct.
Lovely.
Really lovely. Something that helps me to kind of practice kindness is when I find myself with a quiet moment, and I might find myself, my mind worrying, wandering, starting to kind of think about things that aren't particularly helpful. I find myself actually coming to a place of resting kindness, and I encourage myself to go to a place of resting kindness where I can just be, as you're saying, Annie, and just sit in kind of peace and kindness. And particularly if I'm going into a difficult conversation with somebody, I practice being in resting kindness towards myself and towards them to create a more open connection, a more generous connection with them. So that kind of that notion of sitting in resting kindness towards ourselves and others has actually really helped me shift particularly when I'm finding it tough, when I'm finding it difficult. And at the moment, those days seem to be more rather than fewer. So, yeah, that kind of practicing sitting in resting kindness.
I love that.
Lovely. Not a phrase I've heard, but I'm pretty sure it's one that I'm going to be sharing and borrowing. Yeah, and for me, I think it's a similar sort of theme. That idea of always coming to another with recognizing, I don't know what's happening in their life today. I only know part of the story. I only know the shop window at this point. And I need to be kind because I don't know how things are beyond that facade. I need to give them the opportunity to just be in a space and to explore that in whatever way that feels good for them. So really, I don't know. Starting at that, I don't know where they're at today, really helps me just ground back into that kindness space. Fantastic.
Lovely.
I've got a lovely warm glow of resting.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for listening and being alongside us for our conversation. We'd love to hear your reflections and thoughts and wonderings. So please do get in touch below, or you can find us in our links above.